I'm Saul Kumin, and you're watching The Rebound with Coach Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound with Coach Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound. I'm Matt Doherty, and I will be your host. On this show, we focus on the topic of leadership and overcoming adversity in an open and raw kind of way. We discuss setbacks and how to rebound from them. With me today is Saul Kumin. He's a successful businessman, thoroughbred racehorse owner, and philanthropist. In 2018, he became the first owner since 1952 to have both the Kentucky Oaks and a Kentucky Derby winner in the same weekend. Co-owner of Justify, winner of the 2018 Triple Crown. Saul was also a great lacrosse player at Johns Hopkins University, where he wore lucky number 13 and played attack in 2 Final Fours. Saul, thanks for being on the show. Tell us what it was like to win the Triple Crown.
Oh, man, it was awesome. Well, thanks for having me, first of all, Coach. Good to be here. Triple Crown was, it was unbelievable, right? It was one of those, it's a big buildup, right? So you win the first one and you're excited, and then you go to the second one and it's 2 weeks later. So it happens pretty quick. You go back to work for whatever it is, a couple of weeks, and then zip down to Baltimore, and then you win the second one, and you're like, oh man, we got a chance to do this. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later in New York, we had a huge crowd, probably 70, 80 of our closest friends, and it was unbelievable. I think I didn't expect it to be an emotional thing, but as you see the horse, turning for home, and you're kind of sitting there with your parents and your kids and your friends, it hit me, kind of coming from home. I remember sitting down watching the horse, cross the line, and I got kind of teared up, and, my kids gave me a hug, and I remember hugging my dad and my mom. And, it's one of those moments you'll never forget, and, just feel super lucky to have been a part of it.
Why horse racing? I mean, you've had massive success on Wall Street, hedge funds, and then all of a sudden you get into horse racing, and I think 4 years later you win your first race. Tell us about that. Why did you get into horse racing?
Yeah, it was kind of random, actually. I had never, I grew up in Worcester, Mass, kind of blue collar. Had never been to the track twice in my life, and that was, at Hopkins, going to the Preakness if we were able to get a bye during the NCAA tournament. So didn't really know anything about horses. I had a close friend of mine that grew up in Saratoga about 10 years ago now, and had said to me, "Look, I think you'd really like this. There's a kind of a deal element, right? Each horse has a P&L, and you buy it for a price, and it costs X to run. And, I think you'll like that element because you're competitive. There's going to the races with your buddies that I've got a bunch of friends, and thought that'd be fun for me. And then, the family part. He's like, I think your kids would love this. They were young at the time. And so we tried it. There was 4 of us that sort of got into it together. We cobbled together some cash and ended up buying, I think, 4 horses in the first crop, and got really lucky day one with one horse that we had named after my wife, called Lady Eli, and that horse, yeah, which was great, and it that sort of started us. We went on a journey with her and saw the highs and the lows, and that was honestly what got us hooked.
So your wife's name's Elizabeth, right? So Lady
Correct.
Eli. What's the risk of naming a horse after your wife and it not being successful? I just got to ask about potential
Oh,
fallout, because you're all
yeah.
about managing risk with Wall Street and horses. You've had to go in, like, how do I mitigate risk in naming a horse after my wife?
I'd say at the beginning, I didn't think about the risks, right? I just thought, let's roll with it. Since then, I've named a lot of horses after a lot of people. There's been, fast individuals that have had slow horses named after them, and vice versa. So there's no correlation to the speed of the human and the animal. But it's fun. I actually name them after people all the time, because I think it's, it makes it enjoyable. They get excited about it. They'll come to the races, and we've had some good luck that way. So it's been great.
It's very inclusive, right? And that's leadership. And I love to talk leadership on this show. You've been part of great teams at Hopkins, great teams on Wall Street. How did you go about creating a team of investors? Because you kind of went unique. You had a syndicate, if you will, of investors to buy in on horses. So you got a lot of rich people A lot of rich people have big egos. How do you bring people together and create a culture and a team to do the best to put your syndicate in position to win?
Yeah. So we kept it small, right? I mean, I think that there are many successful syndicates out there that have tens and twenties and fifties, and in some cases thousands of people that invest in it. We did it with four buddies. We're each 25% each. We split it evenly. They don't know quite as much about the racing, so they leave the decision stuff up to me, and it's been great. I think you've got to make sure that when they're there, everybody feels involved. You have to really communicate and make sure people feel like if they have an input on something, they can share it. With this group, it's a little bit different than maybe a business, because I think most of them tend to be a little bit more passive. They love to go to the races on the big days. They like to follow it, but they're not quite as involved in trying to drive the decision and direction. What we have done is hire a few really good people to help us and work with us. And when you talk about leadership, I think part of it is finding good people and letting them drive the direction a bit, right? You're there to help and make sure it stays on track. You're there to come up with ideas. Some are good, some are bad, and if you enable them to make decisions, they can push things in either way and not be afraid to fail and not be afraid to try different things. And we've done that. We found a good team of people that we trust and have given them a lot of autonomy to help us.
So you mentioned some ideas that worked out well, some failed. What were some of the failed ideas?
Oh God, we've had lots. It's having certain people buy horses. We've bought in different geographies. We've been pretty successful buying horses out of France. We've been less successful buying them out of Ireland and England.
Those horses are probably drinking.
Yes, that's. Listen, I don't want to, Coach. I don't want to,
The consumption of alcohol probably impacted those horses. I'm allowed to say that since I'm Irish.
Yeah, I'm gonna let that go. I'll let that go. But it might have been the people drinking that were picking the horses out. That might have been part of it too. But we'll see. So there's been lots of stuff, right? And we constantly make mistakes. It's running horses in places that they're not supposed to be run. So sometimes you have a 2-year-old that wins and you get excited and think, oh wow, let's go to the top race instead of letting them progress. And you make that mistake a few times and then you realize. So we make mistakes. We make them every week. And then we try to sit down every couple of weeks and go through and say, all right, like what do things look like? I mean, one of the things about the sport that's interesting is there's a lot of data that's available for people, and it's probably just like professional sports. And now you see in professional sports, people are using the data. Years ago, people really weren't. And so horse racing, I think people are still behind using data. And so we use a ton. We use it for having certain people pick out a certain type of horse. For trainers, most people use a trainer or two. We have, I think, 18 different ones we use because we don't think every trainer is great at training every type of horse. So we look at all their statistics and try to pair the horses with the right people. So and then we make mistakes doing that as well. So we're always trying to tweak things.
Well, we've got about a minute and a half before break, but I want to dive deeper into the analytics because I worked in the NBA. And it was when, and I was coaching college basketball when Billy Beane came out with Moneyball. And I wanted to see how that translated to basketball. And part of it did, not all of it, because it's two different sports. Baseball is really, in my opinion, an individual sport wrapped up as a team game. Basketball is a little bit more of a team game, just the fluid nature of it, kind of like lacrosse. But there's always something you can steal from other sports. What have you taken from the NFL? What have you taken from the NBA and applied it? What have you taken from Wall Street and applied it to horse racing?
Yeah, I think it's more from Wall Street, honestly. I feel like with the racing, a lot of it it's similar to Wall Street. A lot of it is a bet on people, right? I mean, it's a bet on, look, if I'm going to go to a yearling sale and look at a bunch of horses, I have no skill. Right. I mean, I add zero value. If I go look at a 2-year-old sale, I have maybe a tad bit more value because I can see them move. But also, I mean, I have no value. But if we buy horses that are already running on the track, I actually can add some value because One, I can look at their speed scores that they've been running, and there's lots of different things you can look at. And so we have some that we think are better than others, and that's sort of our proprietary way of looking at what's happening in a race. Um, and then we can also do lots of diligence, right? We can talk to the jockeys and the agents that have ridden the horses. We can go back and talk to the farms where the horses were broken. So we can, put a mosaic together and have a lot more information. And then we don't mind paying a little bit more because we know a little bit more and the horse is further along. And so that was really the first thing that we did. And that's just like the hedge fund business, right? For us, we're trying to get as much information as we can about a company, and we'll do channel checks and try to talk to the channel and different things where we have more information, where we're just not like everybody else who's going to buy the same unraced horse. So that would probably be the first thing that comes to mind.
I love it. We're going to go to break. And when we come back, Saul's going to discuss the most significant rebound of his career. The Rebound is sponsored by Sector Spider ETFs, a unique family of exchange-traded funds that divide the S&P 500 into 11 sector index funds. You can buy just the sectors you like or customize the S&P 500 by weighting the 11 sectors to meet your financial objective. Please visit them on the web at sectorspiders.com. That's sector, SPDRS.com.
Alps Portfolio Solutions Distributor, a registered broker-dealer, is the distributor for the Select Sector Spider Trust.
Saul, tell us about the rebound moment in your life, maybe the lowest point, personal, professional. What was it, and how'd you rebound from it?
Whew. I'd say it's interesting. It wasn't. I was on my way to full failure without getting quite there because somebody probably, someone helped me at the right time. I had always wanted to work on Wall Street. I had interned kind of as much as I could while I was in college in the summers. I got a job offer. I started about a couple weeks after I graduated from college, and I was coming off a couple of Final Fours and feeling good about myself, moving to New York City. And, I started working at this investment bank, and I didn't make that transition to being a professional the way that I needed to. And I was on a path where I don't think I would have ended up where I got to today if it wasn't for my first boss. I had a gentleman named Bob DeConcini, who was sort of my boss's boss, my first job. And he saw the path that I was on, right? He saw me, I was coming to work and doing what I needed to do, but I wasn't going that extra mile. I wasn't staying late. I wasn't the first one in every day. I was, going out on Thursday night and coming in, not the way that I should have been my first job on Friday morning. And it was obvious. And, he pulled me into his office about 6 months into the job, and he laid into me. And he laid into me for a while, actually, pretty consistently for those next couple of months, really teaching me about, paying attention to detail and how you only have your reputation once, and how if you don't work harder than everybody else around you, there's no way you're going to go where you want to be. And he knew that I had aspirations for myself, but I was on a path that I never would have gotten there if it wasn't for this first boss. So he just, sort of rode me and consistently gave me feedback. And then it kind of clicked with me pretty quickly, after that. And sort of in that second year, while I was on my way to making lots of mistakes, and I was making them along the way, I just sort of snapped out of it. I realized the opportunity that I had. I started being the first one in every day, the last one to leave. I started understanding what paying attention to detail meant. And how the mistakes that you make might seem small, but they can have big repercussions. And he was just an unbelievable mentor to me. And really ever since then, my work ethic, in the office has just always been pretty strong. I always have him in the back of my mind. And today I've got interns and lots of junior people that have worked for me. And, I feel like I'm giving them that same speech that Bob, right, gave me many times. And it was really helpful for me.
I love this stuff. Were you that way as a player? Like, you achieved great success as a player. You an attackman at Hopkins, 2 Final Fours. So were you in college? Were you arrive to practice early, stay late kind of guy? Attention to detail on the lacrosse field?
I always worked hard. And I kind of have more time to reflect on this today than I did at the time. I think my teammates would describe me as someone that worked hard. I started playing lacrosse late. I picked up a stick for the first time in ninth grade, and I was a goalie the first 2 years.
Right, really.
So I always had a lot to work on, and so I did work hard. Since I've been gone now, and I've got a lot of exposure to these kids that are at Hopkins today. I'm one of the heads of the lacrosse advisory board and on the board of the school, so I'm back there all the time. And I feel like, I look back and we were good enough to win a national championship at least 2 of my 4 years in college, and I definitely have regrets. I didn't dog it. I worked hard, but I could have worked
Right.
harder. Our whole team
Right.
could have. I think that balance of having a good time in college, which we did, with always being able to be a professional on the field and work hard, and I think we were probably somewhere in between. I know all that stuff shapes who you are, but if I had a chance to go back, and when I get a chance to talk to these guys, I always tell them, listen, you only get one chance at this. I wish somebody had told me that. I wish someone had pounded, this is it. Like, it's 4 chances and that's it. It makes me sad that we didn't get it done, because we definitely were good enough.
Yeah. No, I love the story of Bob DiConcini. That could have gone a lot of different ways. He could have ignored you and fired you. He could have done a lot of different things. I mean, I talk into companies giving keynotes about leadership, and we had David Novak, who was the head of Yum Brands. I interviewed him, and he talked about his managers, bosses, leadership positions. He calls them coaches as opposed to bosses. That's a different mindset. And Bob DiConcini coached you. He wasn't a boss. He was a coach. He's a mentor. Talk about that kind of mindset shift maybe in leadership, and if you apply that in your role in business now in the horse racing industry.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, I was lucky to find somebody like Bob who looked at things that way, who looked at young people and said, if I spend some time with this person, I see some talent, and I can help. I can help it come to fruition in some ways. I try to do the same thing as a boss. I try to see the good in people. I try to help people get better. I try to teach them some of the lessons that that are relevant to me. This is kind of a funny story, but we've got a bunch of interns at work, and I took them to dinner Monday night this week in New York City, and so there was 3 people that work on my regular team, and then 3 interns. It was actually, we brought a fourth that doesn't work directly for us, and myself, and we had a nice dinner in New York. And when I got back to my hotel room that night, I had some nice emails from the current people that work for me. Right, hey, thanks for taking the time to have dinner, and it was awesome. I really am excited about the interns, and then I had no emails from the interns, and so I got to the office the next day, and they were there, which was great. And I said, hey, you 3, can you pop into my office? I said, look, this is week 1 of your internship. This is great. Like, you guys are doing great. But I woke up today, I didn't have a single email from any of you. I said, I'm in New York 1 night a week, and I spent my dinner with you, right? And we talked about your careers, and we talked about the summer, and nobody could spend 2 minutes to send me a note to say, hey, thanks for your time. I really appreciate you taking me out to dinner. I said that can't happen again, right? And and I talked to them about some of the things that I expected from this summer, and taking advantage of your opportunities, and making sure you thank people, and don't sit here at the end of the summer and say, wow, these few people I really like what they do and are super interesting, but I wasn't aggressive enough to go talk to them about what they do in the summer. So that resonated with them, because I got a bunch of texts and emails afterwards saying thank you for that, and I'm sorry I didn't write an email. But it's back in the day, I probably wouldn't have been mature enough. It would have bothered me they didn't send the email, and I just would have let it go.
Right.
Now I've done this before. I said, look, we're going to talk about it right now, and we're going to fix it. Now you guys have 7 weeks left this summer, and we're going to see a change. And I think it resonated well. So that's in some ways leadership, I guess.
It is leadership. That's coaching. The thing is real-time accountability. One, we could have core values, we could have mission statements, we could have behaviors to expect, but are you going to hold people accountable, especially in real time? So you as a lacrosse player, you go down the field, you take a bad shot, your coach probably blows the whistle and says, Kumin, sit on the sides or come here. And he corrects the behavior in real time. And you have to allow yourself to be coached. And I think that how you coach them is critical. You give them expectations, set clear expectations. This is what success looks like. This is what we expect here. And then hold them accountable. That's leadership, 100%. We have about a minute and a half. One question that I wanted to ask you, how do you evaluate talent in lacrosse, in business? You talked about evaluating talent on the horse track with numbers, with data. Tell me about the relationship you have with the horse. Like, you talked about Justified, watching Justified, and when you saw Justified, I think you were on a skiing trip in Montana, and you saw that and said that horse is a freak. Like, that's like Michael Jordan. That's like LeBron James. We need to get involved with that. What kind of relationship? Because horses are pretty intuitive animals, right? What kind of relationship you develop with these animals?
I mean, with the ones that you've had from the beginning and the ones that are living closer to you and the ones that you have for a while and that are good, I mean, they're like kids, right? I mean, they're the Lady Eli's of the world. And we've got a horse today called Fluffy Socks that we raced the dad, we raced the mom, we had the baby, and she's run for us this is her 4th year, and she's won numerous stakes. I mean, when we're in Saratoga in the summer, we'll go see her every night, with my kids. We'll bring her mints and hang out with her. I mean, that horse, I could pick her out of a lineup of 100 horses. I mean, I know her like I love her. Sometimes it's hard to build relationships. A horse like Justify had run once. We saw the horse run. We were like, holy smokes, we got to try to figure out how to find our way into this horse. We were able to do it. And then he always lived in California and I lived here. So, that relationship was, I mean, I've been in some amazing winter circles with him, but I don't, it's not the same. So, it's different, right? Sometimes you have them for a year or two. Sometimes you have them for 5 or 6 years. Sometimes you've bred them. Sometimes you bought them as a baby. So it just depends.
So what question didn't I ask that I should have?
Oh man, that's a hard one. And I think you covered a lot of it. I think I feel super lucky that that I've been able to do some things outside of work that I've been able to get some joy from. The horse racing, some of the stuff with lacrosse. We partnered. We bought an NLL team last year and lost in the championship this year, the Albany Firewolves, in our 2nd year. So there's been some, that kind of stuff, being able to do it with, with your family on, kind of to your side. That's different than just kind of going to work and grinding every day. Has been really rewarding, and I feel super lucky to be able to do it.
Well, Saul, thank you for joining us today and sharing your rebound story. Leadership is a learned behavior. We all lead in some way, shape, or form. We all deal with adversity. And when you do, I challenge you to rebound. I challenge you to learn and grow. If you'd like to contact me, you can reach me at dohertycoaching.com. That's DOHERTY.com. Thanks for tuning in.